ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि वदन्ति भूरिराजन्. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're on the chapter Rules for Householders and Monks. The date is March 23rd, 1884, and it's page 411. And Sri Ramakrishna has been talking to mostly Mahimacharan. Mahimacharan was a householder devotee, a little older than the younger ones who used to come to him, who was very fond of the path of knowledge and a little proud of his learning, and he's all the books that he read and everything. But Thakur liked him for some reason, and he came quite often to Sri Ramakrishna. Wandering monks, this is Sri Ramakrishna. This is part of that long section talking to Mahima. Wandering monks, while searching for a sadavrata. This is an eating place where food is supplied free to monks and beggars. Yeah, we often hear about these monks having to beg their food. Most of the time, it's not really begging their food. If you go to these places, Uttarkashi and other places, it's not like they have to go from house to house and door to door and everything. That any of these places where sadhus go and stay, arrangements are made. People, pious and well-to-do householders, if they want to gain some merit or just do some nice thing, that they'll start these places where sadhus can stay or where they can take their food. So if you go to some place like Uttarkashi, you'll see around 10 in the morning, all the sadhus are out on the road walking toward. There'll be several different ones walking there with their little tiffin carriers, and they'll go and they'll get some very watery dal and some old chapatis. Some places maybe a little milk, not too much else, but there'll be places like that. The Laha family in Kamarpukur had done that place for wandering sadhus to stay and take food. That's how Sri Ramakrishna made so many of these wandering sadhus and learned so much. He would spend as a young boy all of his free time when he could with them. So much so that the family got a little nervous. One day they dressed him up in garu and everything, but this is that type of arrangement. Now, this is just to give some context here. Sri Ramakrishna was talking about the advantages to the householder, that sometimes the sadhus, they'll spend all of their time trying to figure out where's a good place to get food. And I myself saw this in Rishikesh, especially. I remember the sadhus would all get together and say, "Where's a good place today? There's some bhandara here and some bhandara." And even it became almost certainly not begging your food places where you go the day before and get a token. Even the sadhus, so that they can show up with their token and then they get their food and everything. So other places, very traditional places, you would really go from door to door. Sadhu would go from door to door. We have a tradition in our order that at least for 3 days at the time of sannyasa that we do this, go begging. And there's a rule that you can't take food from more than 3 places, and you can't you can go to more than 5 places. So if you go to 5 places and don't get anything, that's it. And the first 3 places you get something, then you're done. but everyone goes back in shares, so it doesn't really matter. So these are these places where the sadhus can go and get some food. Sometimes they'll have big feasts, and then the householder will arrange it, and he'll come and he'll give some pranami to everybody. I I remember very funny. To me, it seemed very funny. Uttarkashi, I went to one of these places, and afterwards they came around. Everybody got, I think, 1 rupee and a bar of soap. Because yeah, because they're thinking the sadhus, the people really wandering sadhus with nothing, what will be a useful thing for them? So I remember that. I thought that was very interesting. Yeah, it's a small little piece of cloth and maybe rupee and a bar of soap. So anyhow, Thakur is saying that the householder life, if one doesn't have to worry about food, where the next meal is coming from, the mind is free, and more time can be spent on spiritual practice. Wandering monks, while searching for a sadavrata, may have to go 6 miles out of their way. I've seen them traveling along the regular road after their pilgrimage to Puri and making a detour to find an eating place. You are leading a householder's life. That is very good. It is like fighting from a fort. There are many disadvantages in fighting in an open field. So many dangers, too. Bullets may hit you. Now, what does it mean? Thakur uses this example many times. I've always found it curious that it's one of those things. It's not so simple to understand what he meant. What exactly does he mean when he says the householder, it's like fighting from a fort, and the sadhu like standing out in an open field without that protection around him? What does it mean? Prasuna.
I was going to ask you the
same. Anybody have any idea?
I mean, the food is ensured. I mean, that is very important, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
yeah.
Nobody can focus on meditation or anything.
Yeah.
Until food is there.
I think it means more that the sadhu doesn't have any place to go to fulfill any desires. And the sadhu has no place to hide. His life is an open life. Everyone can see what he does. The householder, they're permitted to have some enjoyment. They can get a break. They can sleep late one morning. It's not such a bad thing. And the sadhu has to constantly do battle with these inner things. I mentioned last time or the time before, there's a very nice explanation given by Saint Teresa of Avila. Yeah, that probably many of you haven't heard this. Somebody was asking her about there's a monastic life. What is it like? And she said, living in the world, it's like you're outside and you feel that you're being followed. That a thief is following you. Someone wants to rob you or even kill you, something like that. So she said, I feel like that I start going faster and faster and faster, and quickly I get to my house and I unlock the door and I get in, and then I close it and lock it very fast. And I think, now relief and everything. Then I realize that I locked the thief inside the house with me. So that means that now the battle is an internal battle, and there's no way to hide from that internal battle. And there's no vacation or holiday for the sadhu. I think it means something like that. I don't know. Anybody have any other ideas? Otherwise, it's not such an easy thing to understand. Thakur says that you are leading a householder's life. That is very good. It's like fighting from a fort. So some family protection, some ability to have some enjoyments and things, different ways of understanding this. There are many disadvantages in fighting in an open field. So sadhu has no place to hide. Just directly battling with desires and passions and controlling the mind, all sorts of things like that. But one should spend some time in solitude and attain knowledge. Then one can lead the life of a householder. Now, Thakur makes this type of statement many times in different ways. Sometimes he says, first realize God and then live in the world. Now, then we get completely depressed. Who will realize God first and live in the world? Here he says, spend some time in solitude, attain knowledge, then one can lead the life of the household. Okay, that's a little easier. Attain knowledge, still hard. Other times he says, first get a little devotion, a little bhakti, and then live in the world. So we don't have to take it so strictly that we want to be a good householder. First, we have to go into solitude, realize God, then we can live in the world again after that. It's too difficult. No one will be able to do that. Very few. But one should spend some time in solitude and attain knowledge. Then one can lead the life of a householder. Janaka lived in the world after attaining knowledge. Now, this is another big point that there's a great controversy among the different schools of Vedanta. Can one attain the highest knowledge through karma alone? This is what the Gita says. Through karma alone, Janaka and others, that they attain perfection. And Sri Ramakrishna always adds, yes, but how much austerity he did before that. Because one cannot practice real karma yoga unless one has some control over the mind and one does some spiritual practice. So Sri Ramakrishna really combines the two. Others will say, Shankaracharya and others, that through the practice of karma yoga, he purified the mind and then could have that realization. So there are different ways of understanding this. But this is always, Janaka is always the example of somebody who, even after being a realized soul, that he ran a whole kingdom without any attachment, anything like that. Whether Janaka of the Upanishads is the same Janaka of Ramayana, we don't know exactly. Janaka of the Upanishads was a high, perfectly realized soul who used to give instructions even to the other sages, Yajnavalkya, and they'd have their dialogues back and forth, and we don't know who was teaching who. Janaka was a great soul. So we find in both this Ramayana tradition and the Upanishadic tradition. Yeah. So that'll be which tradition? That'll be more Vedantic tradition, I guess, but still, yeah. Janaka lived in the world after attaining knowledge. When you have gained it, you may live anywhere. Then nothing matters. Now, again, what does this mean, nothing matters? Whether we get good food, we get bad food, whether it's nice weather, bad weather, that external things won't affect anybody in that state because the mind is everything. The mind is controlled. The mind is happy, then we're happy. The mind is concentrated, the mind is resting on God, and then nothing else makes any difference. It's not that one doesn't care that others are suffering or that there's wars and all sorts of disasters going on. Of course, that affects them. But personally, nothing will make much difference. Whether good food comes, bad food comes, won't make any difference. With our stita prajna, this type of ideal. Mahima, sir, why does a man become deluded by worldly objects? Now, we can give many different answers to this. This is the nature of the human constitution. This is the nature of Maya. This is how we're constructed as human beings. We're constituted that way, that the mind goes outward through the senses, that enjoyment brings attachment and desire, and all of these types of answers. Now, Sri Ramakrishna says, it is because he lives in their midst without having realized God. Now, he's giving a very practical reason for all of this explanation, very practical explanation. We may say that it's not a very deep psychological explanation. We want to be very deeply analytical and psychological. We talk about the nature of the mind, this and that, but from a very practical point of view, this desire for things grows when we have contact with them. And when we don't have contact with them, it's not that it'll disappear completely, but we're not feeding into it. We're not feeding into it. This is why Sri Ramakrishna is always talking about putting a fence around ourselves, protecting ourselves, why environment is so important in the early stages, especially like this small plant that won't be able to grow into a big tree because it'll be gobbled up by the cows and goats. So these cows and goats are the desires and temptations and not having a good environment, not having that protection around us. So this is why holy company is so important. Being very careful about the types of things that we read and see, and movies we go to, all the internet things, and how much of an effect all these violent internet games have had, in this country on young kids and everything. So environment is a very, very important thing. We may say that, well, everything is the mind. Of course, everything is the mind, but the mind is not strong enough, and when we're young, especially. So the environment is very important. So it is because he lives in their midst without having realized God. So this is what Thakur is saying. After we realize God, then we don't have to worry so much. Then he says, when the banyan tree is big, then you don't fence it around. You can even tie an elephant to it. Nothing will happen. So that means we can go anywhere, live anywhere, and we won't be affected at all. I always like the statement that Swami Vivekananda said, that when I was young, I wouldn't walk on the same side of the street where the theater was. Theater was always associated with these women of ill repute, whether it was their fault or not, it doesn't matter. But anyhow, they had a bad reputation. And so he would keep away. He would walk on the other side. And then he said, now I can live in a home of prostitutes and it won't affect me at all. The mind has become so strong. And we know there was one very nice incident when Swamiji was in Egypt, probably Cairo. And they were just walking all around. And they found that they had walked into a red light district without knowing it. And these women were out there kind of laughing and teasing and calling him over and everything. And somehow they recognized that he was a holy man and bowed down and touched the hem of his cloth and everything. So, yeah, Thakur had a thing about prostitutes. He saw the Divine Mother in them. Of course, in India, it's a very sad thing. Nobody wants to take to that type of life. It's poverty and it's the culture and all sorts of things, class and caste and everything. So Thakur never made those. When we hear that he couldn't bear the touch of impure people, it was never that type of feeling, because when he went to the theater, very often Girish would invite him to the theater. Afterwards, all of the actresses would come and they would bow down to him. Some even touch his feet. Other times we see the very pious people and he'll have some reaction. We know with Brinde, with his maidservant, he had the terrible reaction. But this question of purity has nothing to do with caste or with occupation or anything. Thakur knew. So for the theater, Sri Ramakrishna is you can say patron saint of the theater, in Bengal at least. Huh? And every theater will have his picture there. They'll all bow down before it. So how did we get on this topic? Yes.
But this statement kind of like, I'm not able to understand in the sense. Here he's telling that because they live in the midst without having realized God, that you struggle. But then how is householder's life really fighting from within the fortress? Because again, like, you're constantly, maybe you get out for holy company a little bit, but otherwise you're just in like, you're in the midst of world as such.
Fighting from a fortress is also not that easy. You can be attacked from all sides.
Yeah,
they
from
can
which
shoot
you
arrows
have
over
this-
and everything. And yeah,
So
it doesn't mean that it's so easy,
it doesn't feel
but
like
there's a
that
little
is sort of-
protection. Yeah, there's a little protection. say even something like sadhu, doesn't know where he'll sleep at night. The householder, at least they have a comfortable place. They don't have to worry about. So those worries are all gone. But it's not saying that it's easier for the householder to realize God than the sadhu. It's not saying that. It's saying that the sadhu has to undergo certain other types of tapasya, austerities, which may also be time consuming and create some worry and everything. Where will I stay? This and that. So no, I mean he'll actually he'll say that those who renounce everything, for them the path is much more, maybe not easier, but open. Sometimes he says even those who don't do any austerities, yes, having renounced the family life and everything, that this means that they've progressed a great deal. Of course, on the other hand, he said those who renounce the world and don't do spiritual practice, then they should really be looked down upon. So yeah, we have to look at all of his statements taken together. Certain advantages of the householder. Plus, he's encouraging this Mahima. He's trying to encourage him a little bit. So he's talking in that vein. When he talks to the young boys about renouncing everything, he'll say, yes, that don't even think about enjoyment or worldly life, family life, anything like that. Yeah. But the householder should never feel like a second-class citizen. That this is equally a path to be followed, and it's a question of samskara, it's a question of many of the circumstances, all sorts of different things. So this was the question. Sir, why does a man become deluded by worldly objects? Ramakrishna says, it is because he lives in their midst without having realized God. So the point is that after the realization of God, the environment doesn't make such a difference. Now, the householder doesn't have 100% freedom to choose environment. You have your job, you have to go to work, then mix with the worldly people and everything. But when we do have a choice, then we have to be careful. Outside of work, the friends that we have, the places we go to read, that's under our control to a certain extent, of course. Man never succumbs to delusion after he has realized God. The moth no longer enjoys darkness if it has once seen the light. So this means that after God realization, that there's no falling back from that. Once we attain that, then there's something permanent about that. Not that we'll always be in samadhi or bliss or anything like that, but there's some radical transformation that takes place, so that what has been achieved will always be achieved. Now, the path of devotion, there may be lots of ups and downs. We see in the life of Chaitanya Deva and some others, there may be periods with tremendous longing for God after realization. And then that feeling of separation comes. Like Radha and Krishna, that type of thing, that comes. But the doubt that we have before about the possibility of God realizing, all of those things, that's gone. That's gone. And whatever karma we had, that's burned. So all of these things, these are radical transformations that take place after the God realization. This is how we can have some standards to judge whether we have achieved something or anyone has achieved something. What type of transformation has taken place? This is the ultimate test. Or have we become free from doubts? Have we become free from all longing and desire? Are we free from ego? Do we do anything out of self-interest? All these are the key things that will be signs whether we've really achieved something or not. It's not how long we can sit for meditation, all of these things. Many people sit for meditation a long time and then they go out and cheat people and do other things. Yeah. So there has to be that transformation. Okay, now I'm going to skip a section here because this is really meant just for sadhus. We'll go to page 412. The devotees would go on to the Panchavati to visit the Hatha. Oh, now there's a whole story about this Hatha yogi, and this uh, he was staying in the Panchavati. He was given permission to stay. Any wandering monks and sadhus, they could stay there, and uh, he needed his milk and opium every day, and he needed a certain amount of money for that. And this Ram Prasanna, who was the son of Krishna Kishore, and we'll hear about him, became very much attached to him, and was trying to raise some money. So this is a little bit of theme of this chapter. So the devotees who had gone to the Panchavati to visit the Hatha Yogi came back, Master addressing them. Well, what do you think of him? I dare say you have measured him with your own tape. Now, what does this mean? Yeah, that means measuring tape. That we all have our own standards by which we judge other people, and what he's trying to say is, don't think that your standard is the beginning, the end of everything. This is according to you. This is why he would say everybody thinks that their clock tells the right time, but nobody's watch tells exactly the right time. You have to check with the sun sometimes. So this is also a very, very important point for everybody to think about, not just people who are trying to lead a spiritual life, but this distinction between opinion and belief. This is a very, very important distinction. There's a nice incident in the life of Swami Turiyananda. He was in the Shanti Ashram in California. And you remember that story, huh? Shilpa? Oh. And he was walking with one young woman devotee. I think the Shraddha was her name. And this is her reminiscence. She's writing. She said, the Swami suddenly turned to me and he said, when it comes to opinions, then flow like the river. And when it comes to belief or conviction, be firm like the rock. Don't move. And then she said, in this one sentence, he gave me enough for a lifetime. It's very beautiful. Huh? So this is a big mistake that all of us make at different times, that if I don't like something, that I don't say I don't like it, I say it's no good. Huh? We say, how was the food last night? It was terrible. Yeah. And we say, I didn't like it, but the others liked it. Now, is it possible that it's terrible? I didn't like it and it was terrible, but they liked it. There's something wrong with them. Huh? So we have to make sure we understand that, yeah, that according to me. I know another nice story. One of our old sadhus, nobody is special that anybody knows, but I was told this story. He had a habit when he was talking to somebody and getting some type of argument, philosophical argument. Monks like to talk about these things, yeah. And at the end, he would say, I'll say in Bengali, "Tumi thik bolecho." That what you say is right, tomar mate, according to you, in your opinion. Tomar mate, in your opinion, according to you. Yeah, what you say is perfectly right. It's perfectly true, according to you. That means don't think that everybody will accept what you said, but this is your conviction. That's fine. But understand, this is just in your own mind. There's no objective truth to these different types of things. So, how did we get to this? So he said, yeah. So with his Hatha Yogi, nobody likes him. Maybe he's a good person, but yes, from their judging from their own standards, with their own prejudices, because this is what we do. We judge based on our own prejudices. Now, prejudice, we use this term prejudice. It sounds like a terrible term. It just means prejudging. It may be that prejudging is based on experience, and we have to do that. That every time we're faced with a situation, we compare it to some other experience we had. This is the way we make decisions and the way the mind works. Otherwise, If every new situation we have to start from scratch, we won't be able to come to any conclusion about things. Yeah, I've been in this situation before. I know this type of situation, that this is what usually happens. We can come. Now, we may be wrong. We may be wrong. It may be that we've met a half a dozen people who come from the same place, and we formed an opinion about that. Anybody else from that place, we say, oh, I know what these people are like. Now, this is really prejudice. This is from the negative point of view. But otherwise, we remember things that we learned, and that helps us make a judgment. This is the way we were. Only we have to keep that mind open a little bit. So with the Hatha Yogi, Thakur is saying, yeah, I know none of you are going to like him. That he's asking for money. He gets a little angry sometimes. I know you're, but don't think that this means that what you think about him is the beginning and the end. This is the final truth. That is according to you, using your own measuring tool. It's very nice the way he says it. I dare say you have measured him with your own tape. Sri Ramakrishna saw that very few of the devotees were willing to give money to the Hatha Yogi. Yeah, nobody likes to part with their money. Master, you don't like a sadhu if you have to give him money. Yeah, Thakur used to joke that so many people come here because we don't ask for any subscription. We don't have a money box to collect any money. You don't like a sadhu if you have to give him money. Rajendra Mitra draws a salary of 800 rupees a month. At that time, it was a huge amount. A huge amount. We hear about some of the deputy magistrates and things making 300 rupees a month, and this was a big amount. Or Arthur Sen, who kept trying to get that money, it would have been something like this. So it's a big amount of money. He has been to Allahabad to see the Kumbh Mela. I asked him, well, what kind of sadhus did you see at the fair? Rajendra said, I didn't find any very great sadhu there. I noticed one, it is true, but even he accepted money. I say to myself, if no one gives money to a sadhu, then how will he feed himself? There was an earlier conversation with Surendra. Sadhu Bhai. With Surendra, that he also went, and he said he was going to leave the next day, and he left the day before. Yeah, because he didn't want to give money. He got a big scolding. He felt very embarrassed also. But here he's just saying to himself. Oh, no, actually, he's not saying to himself. He's telling everybody, I say to myself. So they're all hearing it, of course. I say to myself, if no one gives money to a sadhu, then how will he feed himself? If there is no collection plate here, therefore all come. And I say to myself, alas, they love their money, let them have it. Now, this also may sound a little too harsh. Many of his devotees, disciples, were very, very generous, and generous to a fault. That same Surendra, who got scolded for not wanting to give money to sadhus, he gave so much money for Sri Ramakrishna, Kashipur, and for Bharanagamat and everything. So many of them were very, very generous. The master rested a while. A devotee sat on the end of the small couch and gently stroked his feet. The master said to him softly, it may be M, of course. He doesn't say that usually. That which is formless again has form. Now he's forgetting all this other stuff and going to some philosophy. That which is formless again has form. One should believe in the forms of God also. Now, if this is M, or even this Mahima Chakravarti, Mahima Chakravarti, he was kind of a traditional Vedantist, but also a Western educated modern type person. So whether strict Advaitin or whether people, Brahmo Samaj, people like that, it wasn't fashionable to believe in God with form, and it was connected, associated with image worship. This is one thing that we learned at the very beginning, that when Sri Ramakrishna would say that this sakar, worship of God with form, in the minds of most of the people at that time, the first thought was image worship. Remember the first conversation, the long conversation that M had with Sri Ramakrishna. He said, well, then should one go to a temple and bow down? Shouldn't people be told that the image is not God? Thakur, when he says this, God with form, it's much higher type of understanding. He's not talking about just going into a temple with some image there. He's talking about this Nirakar and Sakar, and this Nirguna and Saguna, Brahman, will be both with attributes, without attributes, that both are equally real, that Brahman can manifest as the whole universe, that's also form, that Brahman can manifest as all the different deities, that's also form. It's not just this clay image and things like that, which many of them thought at that time. Now, this if this is an M, of course, M now doesn't really need this type of explanation. He learned, he understands this, one of the important teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. That which is formless again has form. One should believe in the forms of God also. By meditating on Kali, the aspirant realizes God as Kali. Next, he finds that the form merges in the indivisible absolute. That which is the indivisible, Satchidananda, is verily Kali. Now, we have two basic ways of understanding this idea of God with form as the different deities. And Thakur doesn't seem very interested in saying that one is better than the other. He'll give, alternatively, he'll give in types of explanations. One is that we're the ones that, because we want to see God in a certain form, God will see God in that form. So he gives different examples that through the intense devotion is like this cooling power that'll make the water form into blocks of ice, and it'll take the form that we want to see. This is kind of a subjective type of thing. Or his example of people going to a pond and taking water, and it'll come out in a different container, whether they use a bucket or they use a pitcher or whatever. It'll take that shape, and it'll take the name that they give it. So this is kind of a subjective thing. The other way is that God himself will reveal himself in the form that the devotee wants to see. This is more of an objective type of thing. Which one is true, God knows. We really don't have to come to any strict conclusion about that. More philosophically inclined people will probably say that there's a psychological element to it, a subjective element. Now, we have a vision of God, subjective element doesn't mean that it's false, because that block of ice is water. It's the same substance. This is how we're getting it. How do we get water out of a pond? It has to take a form. Whatever container we use, it'll take that form. There's no other way of getting it. The other option is we dive in, become one with it. This is Advaita Vedanta. Short of Advaita Vedanta, there'll be some, at least, conception of God, some picture in our mind. It doesn't even have to be form. It can be, we can think of God as Divine Mother without thinking of any form. Just the mother idea. In the Sufi tradition, they very often picture God as the beloved. Now, do they have any image of male or female in their mind? Probably not. It's not part of their tradition. But at the same time, some idea of the beloved is in their heart somehow. And if there's no subjective element, then we can say, I worship God as mother, you worship God as father, you're wrong and I'm right, if it's really objective. So there has to be a subjective element, but this subjective element doesn't mean that there's something false about it. It means that it's not absolutely true for each and every person. For me, it's absolutely true. I want to have my Ishtanishta. I want to have my devotion to that form of God that I want to worship. But if it's absolutely and finally true, it won't melt back into the ocean and become formless again. So this, when Thakur says that Brahman is like water. It can take all different shapes. Water is both formless. What is the nature of water? Is it formless? Yes, but that's not the final truth. It takes the shape of the container. Huh? This is one of the definitions of a liquid. Huh? That a solid will keep the same solid shape, but water, whatever shape it's in, top will be flat and it'll take the shape of the bottom. Even the ocean is not formless. If we could freeze the ocean and remove it, we'd see all the different curves and everything at the bottom. The top will be flat except for the waves. So this is the way Thakur explains. Both are true, equally true. If with form is true without the formless, then we're stuck. Then my conception is the only conception. Every religion that says I worship God as Shiva, it has to be Shiva. This is that wave. It's a permanent wave. It's not going to change. It's not going to melt. It's not going to turn out. It's a permanent thing. If we understand that both are true, then we can respect every tradition that worships God in any form with any name. Now we can say the name is arbitrary, but it's necessary, arbitrary and necessary, because we need a handle. We need something to repeat, something to bring that image to the mind and everything. So Thakur's understanding is so subtle. It's really, really, really brilliant and beautiful the way he explains all of this. So let me read this again. That which is formless again has form. One should believe in the forms of God also. Now, can we believe in the forms of God as eternal and real? Yeah, we can. Thakur says in some places it's so cold that it never melts back. And in some places it actually turns to crystal, something like that. He's not very clear about that, but yeah, we can. That there are all different. We shouldn't think this is the only level of reality that's possible. There's Earth reality. We know that. These different lokas and everything, they have the equal right to exist as this. we can't say too much about that, but that'll be limited. That'll be the devas and devis and everything. He's talking about really this infinite absolute reality that we're trying to make tangible in some way so that we can approach it and we can have a relationship and we have love for it and then ultimately realize it. So he says, that which is formless also has form. One should believe in the forms of God also. By meditating on Kali, the aspirant realizes God as Kali. Next, he finds that the form merges in the indivisible absolute. That which is the indivisible, Satchidananda, is verily Kali. Now, Thakur had this argument with Narendra so many times because Narendra, he hated this idea of Kali when he was younger. The bloodthirsty goddess, and what is all of this with the sword and the skulls and the arms cut off and everything like that. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that Kali is what you call Brahman, I call Kali. Only that Shakti aspect is manifest. This Nirguna Brahman, that Shakti aspect is dormant at that time, but present. If it's going to be active, it has to be there in some dormant form. So he said, what you call Brahman, I call Kali. Don't think that it means just a goddess with 4 arms and all of that. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the semicircular porch west of his room, talking with Mahima and other devotees about the Hatha Yogi. The talk drifted to Ram Prasanna, the son of Krishna Kishore. Krishna Kishore was also, there were many of these householder devotees who were also great jnanis and very pious souls. And Thakur had a relationship with many of these different types. So Thakur liked him very much. And because of that, he liked his son also. But the son really just kind of got drawn in to this maybe charismatic Hatha Yogi or something. And really became like his disciple, you could say. Master. Ram Prasanna roams about aimlessly. The other day he came here and sat in the room, but he did not speak a word. He pressed his nostrils with his fingers, practicing pranayama. You know how we do that with food like this and like this. I offered him something to eat, but he wouldn't take it. On another occasion, I'd asked him to sit by me. He squatted on the floor, placing one leg upon the other. A little bit of kind of the pride of the yogi, the way they do it with or a half lotus posture, something like that. He was rather discourteous to Captain. I weep at his mother's suffering. Now the captain, I don't know what the connection was exactly. Maybe Krishna Kishore and Captain had friends or something. This Captain is this Vishwanath Upadhyay. He was had a very high government position in Nepal. So that meant that he had to come to Kolkata from time to time on business and things like that. So he would come to Sri Ramakrishna, and Thakur liked him very much. He was a very kind of orthodox Brahmin. He believed in a lot of the orthodox things, but also pious. So sometimes he would scold Sri Ramakrishna for keeping company with Keshav. That Keshav was a Vrashtachari, that he had fallen from, that he wasn't a real Hindu and everything. So Thakur would scold him sometimes and say, yeah, I go to see Keshav because he's a great devotee of God. You go to that whoever was in Nepal to earn your money, and you're criticizing me. Anyhow, this was a captain. There are a lot of these characters in this Leela. This play, Captain was one of them. So anyhow, it's mentioned this captain. To Mahima, Ram Prasanna asked me to speak to you about the Hatha Yogi. The yogi's daily expenses are 6.5 annas. That's nothing. Huh? I know even then it's probably not too much, huh? Is it a lot? I don't know.
Should be a little bit.
A little bit.
No, I mean,
Yeah, it's not like
not tiny.
it's not chump change. Huh? It's a little bit, but still, we're talking about people who make 800 rupees a month. Yeah. So yeah, it's maybe for just some wandering sadhu or yogi or something. It's more than it would cost just to. I mean, he could just get his food for free at Dakshineshwar. There are feeding places. He doesn't have to worry about that at all. So it's a little bit extra. The yogi's daily expenses are 6.5 annas, but he won't tell you about it himself. He's a little bit proud. So he has his disciple, this Ram Prasanna, going about trying to get money for him. Mahima, who will listen to him even if he does? Mani Sen of Panihati entered the room with several friends, one of whom was a physician. Mani asked the master about his injured arm. The doctor did not approve of the medicine prescribed by Pratap Mazumdar. The master said to him, "Why should you say that? Pratap is no fool." Yeah, there's another case of somebody coming not knowing much about the whole situation. He hears something another time and starts to criticize. So Thakur didn't like that type of attitude. Suddenly, Latu cried out, "Oh, the medicine bottle has dropped and broken." It was not yet dusk. The master, seated on the couch, was talking to M. Mahimacharan was on the semicircular porch, engaged in a loud discussion of the scriptures with the physician friend of Mani Sen. Yeah, this Mahima. He was very proud of his learning and how many scriptures he had read. We don't know that Narendra went to his house once. You remember, a big library of books, and he started taking the books off of the shelf. In those days, you had to cut the pages. That they would be folded so that when you open it up, there would be two together and be folded. And you had to cut the top in order to turn the page to read the book. So he found that none of the pages had been cut. That meant he just kept them for show. Yeah. Mahimacharan was on the semicircular porch, engaged in a loud discussion of the scriptures with the physician friend of Mani Sen. Sri Ramakrishna heard it and with a smile said to M, there, he is delivering himself, delivering lectures, delivering himself. That is the characteristic of Rajas. See, Sri Ramakrishna was no fool. We think, oh, why does he like him so much? It doesn't mean he doesn't recognize that he has these tendencies and everything. He knows all of these things, likes him despite of it. That is the characteristic of Rajas. It stimulates the desire to lecture and to show off one's scholarship. But Sattva makes one introspective. It makes one hide one's virtues. But I must say that Mahima is a grand person. He takes such delight in spiritual talk. Adhar entered the room, saluted the master, and sat by M's side. He had not come for the past few days. We've seen so much of Adhar Sen, and he came to Sri Ramakrishna, I think 1883, something like that, and within a very, very short time became so close to him. Thakur went to his house many times. He went to Dakshineshwar so many times. And Thakur had so many discussions with him about getting money and all of these things and everything, and then died very young. And Thakur knew somehow. So we when we read the things that Thakur said to him, it makes more sense if we realize that he's talking to a young man who he knows will not live long, and that the time for him to call on God is earlier than for most people. So he says, hello, why haven't you come all these days? Adhar, sir, I've been busy with so many things. I had to attend a conference of the school committee and various other meetings. Master, so you completely lost yourself in schools and meetings and forgot everything else. Adhar, everything else was hidden away in a corner of my mind. How was your arm? Master, just look, it is not yet healed. I've been taking medicine prescribed by Pratap. After a time, the master suddenly said to Adhar, look here. All these are unreal. Meetings, school, office, and everything else, God alone is the substance, and all else is illusory. One should worship God with one's whole mind. Adhar sat without speaking a word. Master, all else is illusory. Now, do we want to take that attitude? No. People who have their household or duty, the whole life in front of them, career and everything, they just dismiss everything. It's an illusion. Why should I bother and everything? This is especially for the other. We have to remember that. There's a footnote here I'll read also. He says, all else is illusory. This moment the body is, and the next moment it is not. One must make haste to worship God. Then this footnote. A few months after this conversation, Arthur died. He was horseback riding, somehow fell off the horse and didn't recover from that. Then he continues, but you don't have to renounce everything. Live in the world the way the tortoise does. The tortoise roams about on the water, but keeps its eggs on land. Its whole mind is on the eggs. Yeah, for Sri Ramakrishna, this mental renunciation and where the heart is and where the mind is everything. The external circumstances are secondary. What a nice state of mind Captain has developed. He looks like a rishi when he is seated to perform worship. He performs the arati with lighted camphor and recites beautiful hymns. When he rises from his seat, after finishing the worship, his eyes are swollen with emotions as if bitten by ants. Besides, he always devotes himself to the study of the sacred books, such as the Gita and the Bhagavata. Once I used one or two English words before him, and that made him angry. He said, English educated people are profane. One day, one young devotee came from Nepal, introducing himself, and he said that my great grandfather was the one who Thakur called Captain. I said, oh, Vishwanath Upadhyay. He said, yes. So a direct relative of his. And they said their family had started a Kali temple in Kathmandu. I don't know if it's still there or anything. After a while, Othar said humbly to the master, "Sir, you haven't been to our place for a long time. The drawing room smells worldly, and everything else appears to be steeped in darkness." The master was deeply touched by these words of his devotee. He suddenly stood up and blessed M and Adhar in an ecstatic mood, touching their heads and hearts. In a voice choked with love, the master said, "I look upon you as Narayana himself. You are indeed my own." Okay, we can stop here. There are a few more lines. Again, a little bit of this is really just not so uh, appropriate, I feel. We'll start next time with this chapter 21 a day, Dakshineshwar. We have a few minutes if anybody has anything to ask. Yeah.
The story that you mentioned, Swami Suryananda,
Hmm.
in matters of principle stand firm like a rock, in matters of opinion.
Flow like the river, something like that. Yeah.
What, like,
That means we have to understand that this is just my opinion, my likes and dislikes. There's nothing so wonderful about it. And it's something I like today, I may not like tomorrow. That I shouldn't get stuck in that, and I shouldn't. The principle is something that I have to be inflexible about. But opinions, they come and go, they change. We shouldn't confuse it with facts. We shouldn't confuse it with some deeply held principle that we have, uh, or with likes and dislikes. We have to realize that these are actually a type of bondage for us. Yeah.
but how do you make a differentiation between what is our likes and dislikes versus what is principle? Like, uh, like some principles are very easy to distinguish, like adherence to truth or not stealing from someone. That's very simple. But sometimes we have a very deeply seated belief, and we think it is a principle, but it's
Yeah, we can have some opinions that we know are just our own opinions, and we can be firm with those things. But we shouldn't feel that this is some universal truth. Other people also have to believe it. Even with principle, these are private things, individual things. But the real answer to your question is simply introspection. We have to analyze our minds. We have to analyze the type of belief that we have. Is this something that really I have to cling to? Is this something that I can be flexible about? That something that just uh, I really don't like to attend these certain types of meetings. They're worldly people and everything, but for the good of the family, for the work and everything, I have to do these things. Oh, okay, I'll do it. But some other things say no, I won't do it. I have a very firm principle about this. I won't do it. So some things we have to be flexible about. That's all. Uh, and we draw the line ourselves. It's a bit subjective. We have to just analyze and try to discover on our own.
Swamiji,
Yeah.
did Thakur consider other as Ishwarakuti?
No, he never called them an Ishwarakoti, but these are all playmates in his Leela. Huh? These are all, I mean, he had his role to play. He was definitely, we can say Antaranga. See, there's another category. There's Ishwarakoti is very restrictive, only six. The Nitya Siddha may be a little bit more. But there's Antaranga. This will include many of the householder. Uh, there was M and Balaram Bose and Ramchandra, many of them. Other, I think we have to say definitely would be part of this inner circle, Antaranga. Yeah. So the Antaranga and Bahiranga. And those who are also come and within that big circle, but they're a little bit on the, Thakur says this, not Mandir has some pillars that support everything, some just for show. Yeah. Or the elephant has the teeth for chewing and the other tusks. So uh, I would say that definitely he has to be considered part of that inner circle, that along with him and others. Yeah. In my opinion. Okay, then we'll stop here. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukham Bhathura Vikraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you. I think everybody knows, everybody who's listening there, watching, that tomorrow we have the funeral for our beloved, dear Swami Brahmarupanandaji. And we won't be able to do it live streaming because mostly it'll be viewings and other things. But we'll have a memorial service that will be live streamed for out-of-town people. That'll be May 7th. And we know that those who can't go in person, that they'll be there in spirit and everything. So, okay, thank you.